So, friends, welcome back to Perfection IAS, and here we are again with a very new chapter of economic survey. And as you can see, the name of chapter is labor, employment, and migration. Now, these three factors are, it act as pivot in the whole scheme of economic survey. Why? Because whether it's labor, whether it's employment, or whether it's migration, these three are very, very important if it comes to Bihar economy per se. Because again, labor, as we know, because of the migration, Bihar provides labor not only to the other states which are close by, but also to some of the states which are quite far away from the mainland Bihar. Again, the employment status is a status which is very much questionable, and as we see that the importance of labor, employment, and migration is also seen in the current election which is going on. So to understand this becomes very important. And again, as we have said that this is a series for 66 BPSC. So again, for BPSC also, this labor, employment, and migration has been a very important sector. So we'll be looking to few points which are important vis-a-vis examination, and then only we'll analyze few things and the nature in which examination could be asked. So if you see the important highlights, the first point itself says that Bihar is one of the prominent labor surplus state in India. Bihar supplies both skilled and unskilled labor to the other part of country as well as foreign ones. So yes, even Bihar not only supplies unskilled and skilled labor to India but also to the foreign countries. And you'll see the part of Sivan, Gopalganj, and these areas are very favorite of the people here are very fond of going to other countries, especially the Middle Eastern countries, for skilled and semi-skilled work. And also we'll be looking to the reason why these particular area are again important if we talk about the migration of labor to outside India. Next, second point says that being an agrarian economy, a large section of working age population is engaged in agriculture and allied activity. As said earlier, that we have been talking of these lines from the first chapter itself. And the next line, the increase in expenditure infrastructure in Bihar just slows the migration of laborer from the state. So again, on a positive note, yeah, the expenditure on infrastructure is increasing, and because of that there is again obviously requirement is very high, but yes, there is certain addition each year to the job available for the skilled and semi-skilled people. And because of that, migration will not say has stopped, but yes, has slowed down, but yes, with a lesser pace. Next, which again is important point which you need to underline, the labor force participation rate for males and females in Bihar was lower than all India average during 2017-18. Now this can be a potential statement in your question. So again, this statement you need to understand, as well as you need to remember it, that the labor force participation rate for males and females in Bihar is lower than all India average. The female labor force participation in rural Bihar was just 3.9 compared to 24.6. Just you can see the difference, 3.9 in Bihar and 24.6 in all India level. Again, if we talk about second important points, fact, then labor force participation rate for urban female was 6.4% compared to 20.4% at all India level. Again, a huge gulf. Next, if you talk about male, so for males, a worker also labor force participation in Bihar is lowest among all state in both rural and urban areas. So again, there can directly be a question on labor force participation rate, and then this particular data becomes important and again easy to remember. Why? Because Bihar is on the lowest rung in all India, not only for female but also for male. So again there is a table over here in which you can see the Bihar is written in bold. So the rural male is 68.8, female is 3.9, and as a person means male and female included is 38.2. Similarly for male it's 66.5, and for female it's 6.4, again the lowest, and for person it's 38.2. So again you can analyze and you can see that the all India average as well as the status of different states is also given over here. Next we'll talk about the workforce participation rate. So that stands for WPR. For male worker was 64%, almost 8% lower than all India average. So again workforce participation rate is also lower here, and the workforce participation rate was abysmally low at 3.9% in rural Bihar. So again you'll see that the workforce participation as well as the labor force participation rate, and again it may sound one and the same, but yeah, there is a bit of difference. So again these are on the lower side on Bihar. Again an analysis which is important is pattern of employment. And in pattern of employment, though there are a lot of lists given here, will be focusing on points which are important for our BPSC examination 66, and we'll directly come to point number second, which talks about in Bihar the employment rate for male workforce was higher than the all India level, while the female unemployment rate was much lower than all India level. So again that's an important fact which you need to understand, which you need to remember. Again next point, at an all India level the employment rate was 5.7, unemployment rate was 5.7 for the rural males and 6.9% for urban males. Further, the unemployment rate was 3.8 for rural female and 10.8% for urban female at all India level. So we'll be seeing that the employment here is higher than all India level. Why? Because the employment here is basically in skilled and semi-skilled work, where we do not require much of skill generation, much of know-how, and that's why it's easy to get an employment. But yes, that employment sometimes is again as we can see that there are different categories of employment. So some people term it as a cyclic unemployment, it is seasonal also. So seasonal unemployment is also there, and along with that the unemployment sometimes is underemployment. So we cannot term it as unemployment, and that's the fact. So it is underemployment. Why? Because again either the conditions or the requirements or the skills which is required, if you have a higher skill and you are involved in a job which requires a lower skill, so that becomes unemployment. So the case is also there. Next point, a plausible reason for low unemployment rate among female is that majority of them cannot afford to be unemployed due to poverty. So again the reason also is given here. So this point you can see that the low unemployment rate of female is not because there are a lot of employment opportunities or something of that sort, but it is because they cannot afford to be unemployed, because obviously the earning of one person is not able to sustain their livelihood. Even the basic requirement of their livelihood is not sustained due to that. Again next point, in Bihar 55.9% of male were self-employed, which is slightly higher than all India average of 550 2.3%. Next, the proportion of regular wage salaried male was lowest in Bihar. This also is a very important point. So the proportion of salaried male is lowest in Bihar, that is 11.9 compared to other states. Next, in Bihar, major employment generating industry for worker male is now this chronology again could be asked in examination. So For male and female, it would be different. For male, it is agriculture first, agriculture, forestry and fishery, which is 44.6% highest. Then we have construction, and in female, we'll see that the agriculture, forestry and fishery stands on first place, but yeah, on the second place is education there. So the difference of education in female and construction in male need to be remembered. So please underline this particular last point. So construction, and then wholesale and retail, trade, repair of vehicle and manufacturing, which is 9.3%. So please remember this particular line. And for female, major employment generating industry is agriculture, forestry, fisheries. So as I said earlier, but yes, education over here there is on second place, and then we have the food service and the allied activities. So again, the list of it, again, you need not to go through this complete table. We have given it just to have a comparative analysis. So yes, you can have a comparative analysis once, but you need not remember this table. The important points are given here in a very precise manner, so that you can understand as well as remember it. Next, the pattern of engagement of female worker in Bihar is strikingly different from that of all India. So again, the all India pattern is quite different from what Bihar see, and again the reason is because of the basic the lack of skills which people are having, and because of that they are involved in semi skilled or basically unskilled work, which again cause many a problem in a sense that obviously, yeah, work is available, but that work cannot sustain them. So next point, and the last point here, for instance, in Bihar, after agriculture, forestry, fishery is the most important employment provider for female worker was education, contrary to a common perception that construction or manufacturing would be the second largest employment provider to female worker. So yeah, again, in all India average, what we see that for female worker is still the trends goes on with male, and yes, construction becomes the very important sector. But as we know that in Bihar, the infrastructure sector is not well developed, and also the investment in infrastructure is not very much. And because of the reason, the opportunity in the secondary sector, basically the sector which relates to infrastructure construction, is not very much. There are scope for semi-skilled and skilled work, but that is then taken by the male counterpart, and very less remains for the female. So that's the reason behind that. Again, the second topic, is migration. And again, in migration we'll be seeing few points which are important, and after that we'll just come to the important policies which our government is implementing on these three sector: labor, employment and migration. So in migration, the economic history of India confirms that Bihar has an uninterrupted source of migrant workers at different stage of economic and social development in India. The data from census 2011 suggests that the worker from Siwan, Gopalganj, West Champaran and East Champaran, as I've discussed earlier, in Bihar often migrates to Gulf countries. Census 2011 provides information on number of migrants and their reason for migrants, and again for that we have given a very detailed list. You can go through this list and try to understand the trend basically in Bihar, and you can compare that with all India also. So this one is the first box relates to India, and the second box relates to Bihar. So please have a look at it and try to understand it. Yeah, plus but don't just mug it up. Why? Because all the important points are given next. So in Bihar, 75% of total migration took place due to marriage. Now again, this is a potential question, because again migration, when they talk about migration, they'll put construction, they'll put different things. But yes, again the highest pie of migration again relates to the marriage, compared to 46% of all, and which is again higher than all India average. That also you need to remember. Only 2.9% of total migration took place due to work, employment, businesses, etc. Of the total number of migrating population due to marriage, 98% were women. So again, as we know, because of the patriarchal setup and the patrilocal setup basically, so these trends are there. And again, we are not going to going too deep into the analysis and what are basically the reason behind this, but yes, again, that is the scope of sociology. But for analysis in economic survey, these data would suffice. Next, migration due to social norms and customs has been overwhelmingly dominant over economic reason of migration. As I've said, 98% of women, and again here we can see 75% of total migration. So again, we can easily conclude that because of these social reasons are a dominant factor rather than economic reason, which again is not a very good sign. Now, next, excuse me. Migration of women has been primarily 175 controlled by social and cultural factor, and the migration of men has been determined by economic factor. So again, for men it's social factor, for for men it's economic factor, and for female it's social factor. Again, can be easily concluded. Bihar account for 15% of immigration clearance, which is second highest after Andhra Pradesh. So Bihar ranks second in immigration clearance. You need to remember that also. It is well known that majority of migrants from Siwan and Gopalganj went to Gulf countries for work. And again, the reason again also I mentioned here that one can safely assume that over the years the aspirant have already established a strong network, and because of this strong network, again people of from Siwan and Gopalganj rather find it easy to move on to Gulf countries than the other parts of Bihar, and that's the reason why people from these areas are mostly to the Gulf countries. Now again, as I've said, in initiative of state government for labor, and again these are there are list of important initiatives which we have given. I'll be mentioning the name basically, and the important points what I want is the link is provided. You can download this particular document and go through it once. So first is bonded labor rehabilitation scheme. So basically this scheme was implemented in 1976, and as it said, that bonded labor scheme abolition act. So basically it was to abolish the bonded labor. So 1976 has entrusted the state government with the responsibility to free bonded labor from various form of operation and ensure their rehabilitation. So not only they need to be freed, but also they need to be rehabilitated. So alternate source of income, alternate source of employment need to be given to them. To support the state government, the central government initiated a scheme in 1978 known as Centrally Sponsored Scheme for Rehabilitation of Bonded Labor. So please underline this particular line. And later, the central government revamped the old scheme in 2016. Under the revised scheme, the central government would bear entire burden of financial rehabilitation assistance. So that's the important point from this particular excerpt. Then we have next, which is called Bihar Shatabdi, which is again called Bihar Shatabdi Asanghatit कार्य क्षेत्र कामगर आवाम शिल्पीकार सामाजिक सुरक्षा योजना. So a name is quite long, but what you need to remember that this yojana was effective from 2011, and it is to provide social security to unorganized worker as a large proportion to the worker of Bihar engaged in unorganized sector. So as I explained earlier, so we have a very large unorganized sector, and for that we have this particular scheme. Again, the nuances of this particular, like construction worker, building over construction worker, regulation, employment and condition of service 1996. So we have been looking into different sectors, and again we have been trying to encode the best of best law available, the best practices which is available in world through these codified laws. So please just go through it once. Next is child labor, again a very important issue, and under the Child and Adolescent Labor Prohibition of Regulation Act 1986, Section 3 completely prohibits the engagement of children in all process and occupation. In 2009, State government launch a state plan of action for child protection. Please underline this statement, very important. And rescue rehabilitation to create a child friendly and safe environment for overall well-being of a child. So again, you can go through these particular text. Again, minimum wage rate, the determination of minimum wage is one of the most important means to ensure the livelihood of people who are working in a unorganized sector. So unorganized sector, again, you cannot regulate their salaries and pay and other perks. But yes, what you can do is, again, government can have a minimum wage act. So below that particular, so that becomes a base thing. So because below that base, no person shall be given mean the wages. So again, that wage has to have either that particular base or above that. Again, you have different talks about the recruitment of states and other organization and how these are being done. Bihar Public Service Commission, Bihar Technical Services, and Beltron and Rural Self-Employment Training Institute. So please go through these except basically, again, a very important plan of government is Dasrat Manji Labor and Planning Institute. Basically, in 2019-20, the state government has allocated 2 crore to establish Dasrat Manji Labor Planning Institute to perform role of think tank for state government on issue of labor and planning. So since again this is a very burning issue in our state, so again this particular institute holds a very important place. Again, the institute will arrange training program for capacity building for government officials and will provide excuse me, relevant information on enforcement of labor law and desired change and amendments in labor law to guide the state government. So that is also there. Then we have technical education in Bihar. Please go through this employment state insurance scheme. So that also is very important, and you can see that as Employment State Insurance Scheme Act of 1948 was first major legislation by Parliament on social security for the workers. So basically it's a social security scheme. So please go through this. And then we have skill development, Bihar skill development mission, which was constituted in 2010. Important, please underline this particular. Why? Because these years basically when in examination in BPSC we see that they either ask the scheme of government related to different they'll give the name of a scheme, and then they'll ask that which this scheme is regulated or this scheme is under which ministry or the year. So year is also important. Then we have Kaushal Yuva program. The Bihar Skill Development Mission has launched a unique skill training program called Kaushal Yuva program, targeting people in age of 15 to 28 with a minimum education level of standard 10. So again, that also 15 to 28 is the age range, and the level of education is standard 10. You need to remember this also. And then at last we have support of migrant workers, and for that what government have done. So Bihar Rajya Samudra Par Niyojana Bureau is also there, which talks which basically is to address the concern of aspirant migrant. So the people who go outside abroad to work, obviously they require a sort of interface between the government of that particular country and here, and for that Bihar State Samudra Par Niyojan Bureau is also there, which also inter alia provide different job opportunities. So they also have information for different job opportunities which can be concerned. Next, Bihar State Migrant Labor Accident Grant Scheme 2008. And again the year here is very important, which is 2008, and it was implemented in all district of Bihar. Next, in the amendment scheme of 2016, along with all death cases, permanent and complete disability, and permanent and partial disability were also incorporated to enlarge the coverage of the scheme. So that you also need to remember. Then again, there are facts related to remittances, and again, as we know that Bihar is basically Bihari who go outside to work, outside India to work, they are involved in semi-skilled and skilled work. So obviously the payment is quite low, and you'll see that as the share of total remittances of Kerala is 19, Maharashtra is 16, Karnataka is 15. At the same place, Bihar stands quite low at 1.3, which is again quite low. Why? Because again they are involved in the work which are not very much remunerative. So that's also is a fact. You can please compare this particular chart. And again, next point says, as it is observed in the table, Kerala received 19, as I've said earlier, and followed by Maharashtra and Karnataka. So these three states you need to remember, and Bihar stand 11th. Please underline that, with 1.3% of total remittances. According to the finding of report, almost 59.2% of total remittances was used primarily to maintain consumption at the origin household. So that also, and that in fact give you an idea why. Because that gives an idea that the remittances or the income what they have through skilled and semi-skilled work is quite low. Now again, this why, since this chapter is full of facts, so we have also given a section so that you understand that what is utility of this particular chapter. So this particular significance of this chapter for prelims examination, we have given data for different official sources suggest that work participation rate in Bihar is lower than all India average, especially for women. Next, the labor force participation rate for male and female in Bihar was lower than all India average. And next point, the female labor force participation in Bihar was just 3.9% compared to 24.6% of the all India average. Next point, the reason for such low labor force participation rate for female is multidimensional, social, economic, and cultural. And in the core of it is the basic is the socio-economic situations. The workforce participation rate for both male and female worker has been very low in Bihar vis-a-vis all India average. So these 5 point, basically 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5 over here are the basic takeaway of this chapter. Apart from that, you need to analyze things, and you'll also find this question for prelims, and I want you all to solve this question. And please try to just give the answer on the comment, so that we can have a look and we can have an analysis of the takeaway from this particular chapter. This chapter again is very important for this year prelims. And again, at last also we have a section which talks about question for mains. But yeah, this is for the mains, but what you need to focus at this junction is this particular question. And along with that, please go and have a look on this particular chapter, have a thorough look on this particular chapter, and then try to follow my video. It will help you. So friends, we will be here again with next chapter. Stay tuned. Thank you.